Welcome along to episode 16 of the Strategy and Conversions podcast. I mean, just before we started, we were trying to work out what episode we're on, right? I feel like
Yeah,
I think the problem is as well, Mark, we have so many chats. We chat all the time.
we do,
And then
yeah.
we have to get serious and press record and
I know.
actually do these podcasts. But no, last week's podcast was pretty good. It was probably our longest one yet. I think
Oh, wow. No, we did go on a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I think we're going to definitely make sure this one kind of, drops below an hour.
Yeah. I think that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll save you a little bit from listening, give you a little break. But look, as we got to the end of last week's episode, we were talking a bit about mindset. We're going to get into that in this podcast episode. We're going to get into maybe the kind of sophistication around marketing as well. But when we were talking about mindset, we did a podcast not so long ago in regards to mindset with life goals and planning out what you want and stuff like that. But the mindset we were kind of talking about last week was indecision or being reluctant to make a decision, or even the opposite as well of rushing into a decision.
Yeah, it's all the kind of same thing, isn't it? And I know again, and one of the other biggest areas of mindset is how it blocks us doing things, because we for whatever reason, and we can come on to that, for whatever reason, we lack the confidence or the courage to do something because we think we're going to fail or it's not going to work. And there's a huge area of the mind where we set up these psychological blocks for no reason whatsoever. It's simply because that's what's been fed into us in the past. And and as you move on and you get skilled up, you find that you are capable of doing things, but you have this psychological block that still stops you doing it.
I think that there's lots of all different kinds of levels. Right?
Yeah.
So those blocks, I think they still happen. So I think they probably happen like when you're a child and
it's immense. That's where that's where they nearly all come from.
Okay.
So those emotional blocks. I mean, I can go. I could talk all day about this. I could really go in, and we probably haven't got time for that. But when you're born and you have two parts to your mind, basically the conscious and the subconscious or unconscious, whatever you want to call it. And when you're born, the conscious hasn't really formed properly, and so the subconscious is where all the programming, if you like, if you imagine imagine you're a computer, all your software, the programming into your software is all done. All comes in through your subconscious. And when you're from 0 till 6, maybe 7, you have all these authority figures like your father, mother, teachers, whoever, all these people that are pouring information into you, and they're filling you full of their beliefs and their emotional emotional beliefs and emotional states. And sometimes you'll get it, oh, don't do that. You'll never be good at that. Or no, you don't need to. You're not good enough for doing that, and you take it on. You take it in, and then as your conscious grows, we only work at a conscious level. So when we're in business, whatever we're doing, we're working on our conscious level. And the conscious is unaware of some of these emotions, if you like, that we have in our subconscious that tell us that we can't do something. We're not even aware of it. So we naturally go ahead and we'll make errors. We'll do, like you said, sometimes we'll rush into things because we haven't got, I don't need to do my due diligence. I don't need to think about this. I know it's going to work. I just rush into it. And it doesn't. And it reinforces the belief that we're not good enough. And that's a belief that's been sitting there since childhood. And it's a fascinating area. It really is.
I totally agree, and I think that's where I know that you know a lot more than me, as you've just kind of like alluded to there. And it's like, and this is the kind of, I guess, the business coaching side and the business mentoring and stuff like that, where you go through with people to figure out, what exactly it is that they're going after and removing any sort of roadblocks and stuff like that. But the way how that kind of entwines as well with marketing, I think it's just so important, because that happens where people will put stuff out and they don't get the kind of recognition they want, or the kind of vanity metrics, or even that it doesn't result in money. And then they just they start having that kind of self-doubt.
Yeah.
Or is it because of me? No one wants my stuff and all this kind of thing. And it's like, bottom line is no one's seen it.
Yeah, exactly. There's all sorts of reasons. So yeah, and the thing is, you've got to remember that going back to these kind of messages that were put into us. I remember just a classic example that I remember. My dad, when I was a kid, I was fascinated. My dad seemed to be able to do something for the first time, and it would be brilliant. And I thought, oh, I'm never good enough to do that. And what you don't realize is that he spent bloody days and maybe months looking through magazines to get it right and do it right. And he probably did it and failed and did some other stuff. But I only saw the end result, and it was like I thought, oh, I'll never be that good.
Brilliant.
You know?
I guess now as well. I reckon people are up to the same tricks, but they just Google it. Look at YouTube videos, and they bang that out in 5 minutes now.
Yeah. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because especially at school. I mean, it's so we hear so many people at school that are always told, "Oh, you'll never be good at that," and then eventually they've cleared those blocks, and now they've become a writer or they've become a top class athlete or something. But there's, I mean, I think wasn't it J.K. Rowling who was told she wasn't any good at writing books? Or
rejected like almost 10 times or something like that.
Yeah, exactly, and because she obviously had it in her head. Because she was never going to be good enough. And once you have that in your head, everything you do, it's horrible, really. Once you have an idea in your head that you're not worth it, you're not worth it, you can't do it. You always have this thing called imposter syndrome, where you think, oh, I can't do that, I'm not good enough. And you think, well, why can't you make a video? Oh shit, I can't make a video. I can't go on a Facebook Live. Or I can't do a podcast. Bloody hell, I could be seen by thousands of people. Oh, I can't have that. I look terrible. Or this kind of stuff comes back. You think, no, you don't.
It's funny, isn't it? I guess it's weird. I mean, like, I talk personally. I think like sometimes, like for me, you know what, mate, we hit record. We don't really know what we're going to talk about, right? We kind of just we start talking and things just unfold and stuff like that. I do the same with if I do any kind of networking or anything like that. I never know what I'm going to say until I'm about to say it, right? I'm quite comfortable in that. Like someone can ask me a question, I can answer it. I'm not going to get tongue tied or, start to sweat or anything like that. But when it's just me, like facing camera, and stuff like that, I do go through a moment where I'm like, do I look all right? Do I sound all right? Like what's going on? Like hair's receding a bit, and stuff like that. And I guess, like I said, it probably happens at all levels and in different ways.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
But I think it's just how you deal with it. Because like I said, that whole kind of thing of, well, if I felt that way, we would never do this podcast, right? And we would never move on to do things like that. And things like with J.K. Rowling, for example, like you said, is that once you've been knocked back once, right? And then you've been knocked back another time and another time, that's tough to keep going.
Yeah.
That is tough to just like get all those kind of knockbacks. But we've kind of touched on this before about how long does it take to be an overnight success. And you take all the kind of people who are like, say, writers and pop stars and sports stars and stuff like that, it's very rarely that they were just given everything. They were handed everything. They had to work for it. They went through knockbacks. They come through and stuff like that. I mean, we take football, for example, right? And we've just had, the European the Euro 2020, even though it's in 2021. And England have Harry Kane, as their captain, their striker. And he plays for Tottenham, and he's probably up there, classed as one of the top strikers in the world. But when he was younger, he couldn't get a game at a club. He went out to like several different clubs on loan, where he couldn't really get a game. And it's like that kind of stuff could be demoralizing. You think I'm never going to make it. Exactly. Maybe I'll go and do something else.
Yeah.
But I guess it comes back to that strong mindset, right?
Yeah, it does. And if you look at, I mean, nowadays, I don't think you have to go far with any. It doesn't matter whether it's someone who's, say, an opera singer, or whether it's a top class athlete or a footballer. All of them have got often more than one coach, and there's a reason for that. Because you've got people who I mean, again, you got people who will who always have this thing. God, I can't do it. I mean, people, top class cricketers, they're known. Top class batsmen are known to have going through a really bad spell when they play absolutely awful. They're out first ball, or they get caught really, and then a couple of seasons later, they're cracking out double hundreds and things, and that doesn't happen automatically. That's because someone's coaching and say, right, you got a block now. For some reason, you've lost your confidence because they've moved up a level. They've, instead of going from, say, scoring like 10 or 20 runs in a game and thinking that's really good, they're now thinking 10 or 20 runs. Well, that's just the start. And they've gone up a level, but their mindset also has to go up that level as well.
Yeah.
And I know I've spoken a little bit about this, I think, before on various early podcasts about this upper level problem that people have. Is that when you upgrade from, say, you score, so let's say you're a footballer and getting to the first team and getting into that squad, you think, wow, that's a real milestone. You're there. Now you've got to score goals because you're a striker. And then you think, oh, Christ, I'm never going to beat this keeper. I'm not going to be able to dink past this defender. And it's when they can do, everyone's got massive potential inside them and they can do that. But then it's, so that what you don't see is all that practice. But as a coach telling, yeah, you can do it. How do you know you can't do it? Yeah. Why are you telling, what has made you think that you can't do this when you've never even tried it before? You've never been in that first team. You've never taken on that goalkeeper. So why are you telling yourself you can't when actually you can say, just like any other goalkeeper, he's not a superhuman. He's just the same person as anyone else.
Stuff like that, I think is amazing. Like you said, that how do you know you can't do something if you've never tried to do something? I mean, obviously there are certain limits, right? I mean,
of course, yeah.
We can't jump off of a bridge and expect that we can fly.
No, exactly. Yeah,
we can't do that. But however, there's nothing that's too far out of our grasp. Like you said, it may need a bit of practice, or
of course,
we may need to go through certain kind of motions to get there. But there's nothing that we can't do.
Yeah,
I mean, you just have Branson who's gone up in a rocket.
Phenomenal. Yeah, phenomenal.
And it's like stuff like that. Like he's decided that that's what he wants to do. He's obviously got a lot of money to throw behind it to make it happen. But the whole point is that it's pushing boundaries all the time.
Yeah,
because those boundaries are what I guess what we're told, like you said, going back to kind of authority figures and stuff like that, is we get told, we get taught, this is what to do. And I think, like you said as well, with your kind of parents and stuff, like there's that kind of point where when you're young, you get to a certain age, I'm guessing like 2 or 3 or something like that, where you start making a racket, or you keep asking why. And your parents tell you to be quiet.
Stop asking like that, so many questions. Yeah.
And then you learn to kind of, I guess, behave is what they tell you to do, right? So you behave in a certain way, and then stuff like that, like you said, from childhood, maybe stays with you. But what I find really interesting is like things like as you get a bit older, then in school, I think that then turns more into the kind of maybe peer pressure, but it turns into your surroundings in regards to who you hang around with and different people. And you don't want to do certain things because you don't want to maybe look uncool, or
exactly.
Look at people to fall out with them or something like that. You don't stay part of the clique. And like it's crazy when you think then 10, 20 years later and stuff like that, you don't even talk to those people. You don't even see them again.
No, exactly. Yeah.
But like in that time, in that moment, and I guess that's what happens with people sometimes, where I've had it where I'm talking to people about marketing, and they're marketers who I respect and I think they're good and stuff like that, and they say things like, "Oh yeah, I'm not on your level," or I was going to post on that, but you posted, so I thought I can't post on that because you have. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, it's like everyone has an opinion, right? Everyone, and these people have skills,
and everyone has those kind of fears, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what was the acronym for fear is false emotions appearing real, which is a bit of a buzz thing in the coaching world. But it is, because going back to the video thing, someone says, "Oh, I can't do video," and you say, "Well, why do you think that? Have you ever tried doing video before?" No. Well, so why do you think you can't do it? Why do you think you can't be a natural? And it was when I went through all my coaching training years ago. To get to being a personal performance and a business coach. And that's when I dealt with it all myself. So that's when I suddenly thought, God, I'm in a real mess. So I spent ages, and I've got coaches that help me go, to get through stuff. And I think as business owners, I think it's pretty essential that all business owners have a coach, have at least one coach. Some will have 2, but because it just increases their awareness and their thinking as they're going along. Because as you grow a business, you've got to, I mean, we again talk about the previous podcast. You start a business, let's make your first 10 quid online. Great. Okay. The mindset is, I can make my first 10 quid. That's not going to get you to be, that mindset will not take you to being a millionaire or making 100 grand, for example. You've got to have a different way of doing things, a different thinking, and also have that whole belief that, yeah, I can do that.
It's really, really interesting, actually. You kind of brought that up because I was talking to someone about the podcast where we were talking about kind of upping your prices and stuff like that, right? And we were talking about kind of mindset, and people have that kind of level where they think I can't charge certain amounts and stuff like that. And the conversation I was having is they said, well, where is that ceiling, that you just put your prices up to? And I said, look, there is a different way of looking at this. Like the way how we were kind of explaining it within the podcast, it's like, look, if you're charging, for instance, just say you're charging £500, for your services, you could probably times that by 4 and still get away with it. But if you wanted to then turn around and say you want to start charging 25,000 for your services, right? That's a big difference. And what happens there is that there's a lot of sophistication that comes in and fulfillment and how you are basically delivering that transition to someone. Like people will pay it, don't get me wrong, because money is irrelevant. I think sometimes when we're talking about Branson, guy wants to fly a rocket ship, so he'll pay whatever he wants to do it, right? So if someone can provide him with that, he's going to pay it. The same thing is that, okay, look, if you're providing someone with a solution and you're showing them that you can give them that solution, that they will happily pay that.
Yeah.
However, you have to be totally confident that you can deliver that solution. I think that's the big jump that needs to happen is you need to figure out how you provide something. I think it's not just a case of upping your price for the sake of it.
No,
you have to believe in what you're offering can actually give that transformation before you look at upping your price.
Yeah, because if you don't believe that, you won't give a credible argument as to someone says, well, why shall I? Or if it comes down to that, I mean, for example, just talking on that subject a second, why should I pay $2,000 for that? And if you straight away think, well, actually, maybe I used to do it for 500 quid and perhaps you shouldn't, bang, you've just lost that sale. But I think anybody, it's interesting, isn't it? Because people do get hung up on price an awful lot. And I think there was a survey, I can't remember, I've read this a couple of times, and I think I've read different surveys that say if you have, I think, people give 8 reasons of what when they buy something, and apparently out of 8 reasons, price comes down to like number 5 or 6. They'll look at all these other reasons first, and then of course price is important, but it's a minor consideration. And again, going back to the copywriting and going back to the marketing conversations. If you've done your job correctly, price really is in most cases irrelevant, because you'll get to the price, you say it's $2,000, and they'll say, oh yeah, okay, and because they've seen the value beforehand. But if your argument isn't good enough, and I mean, if your conversation isn't strong enough that you've answered all those objections and you've shown them how it really works, like for example, Branson saying, okay, how do I know you're going to be able to actually supply this outcome of having a rocket ship that goes into space? They had to come up with some pretty hefty arguments, obviously, and eventually their price would come up. And if the price is within a budget, and he had a huge budget, obviously, but if the price was within a budget, he'll pay it. But if he's not convinced beforehand, price will never probably even be asked, because he'll think, I'm not really sure. You haven't convinced me.
And mate, I think we've done that before, haven't we? And I know, for example, I spoke with clients where we're talking, all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, that's a bit steep." And stuff like that. And I know someone who I can work with for cheaper and stuff like that. It's just like you're always going to get that. I think no matter what level you're at, you will.
Yeah.
And then I think there is a tipping point. Like you said, I've been been having conversations with prospects and stuff like that. And you've got to a point where you've actually you've done the deal, and you ain't even mentioned what your fee is, and then it's not even an issue. It's just they because they're just like, yeah, we need this. Yeah, you're going to provide that. What does it cost? Yeah, that's fine. It's not about what that cost is. And I guess there's a few different ways of looking at that. I mean, if you for instance, I mean, this sounds terrible to say, but it's that whole kind of thing, isn't it? Is that if someone was ill, if you were ill, right, and let's say you, for example, like when you had like a heart attack and stuff like that. I mean, you would have give up everything, right, for people to make sure you were okay.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
That whole kind of thing is like so that whole thing of money sometimes just irrelevant. It's like you pay whatever to solve a problem.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing, and talk about that as well. If you ever start talking to somebody and the first question they ask is, "How much do you charge?" you walk away, because I mean, go back to the heart attack. If I said to the ambulance, "Well, what's this going to cost me?" they would well, hang on a minute. But I mean, that's the whole point. If you don't deal with people who are going to be well, yeah, how much do you charge? And you say, well, you haven't even heard what I do yet. There's just that's not who you want to work with. So you want to be selective in those people that you are going to be having those conversations with. But if you get the right kind of prospect, and that's again through different conversations where you've actually filtered out the right kind of prospect, then yeah, price is not irrelevant, but it's way down that list. Way down that list.
I totally agree with that, mate. I was just thinking when you're talking then as well about how that whole thing of maybe people putting off. Being put off of things sometimes with money. I think you can also get that as well, where people stop before they've started because they're looking so far ahead. So business, I think, is a classic example where they go, okay, like, I want to start a business because I want to make some money. And then they start going into, I'll set up a company. I've got to then keep accounts. I've got to pay tax. And then, I get to some point, I've got to pay VAT. And then, and then I've got to pay staff. And I've got to pay national insurance, and I've got a holiday, and then there's HR, and all of a sudden you're like, I don't want this business.
Yeah,
and you've already took yourself out. You haven't even sold anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you haven't even got to that point, but you've talked yourself out of it just by going through that. When actually, a lot of those things are down the line.
Yeah, of course, and some of them, for example, depending on what kind of business you build, you may never become VAT registered, or you may never take on staff. There's all sorts of things in there that, I think you're right. People scare themselves to death. It's quite interesting. There's quite a few freelance sites that I go onto, or startup sites on Facebook and that. And some of the first questions, as you just said, they come out with, have I got to set up a limited company or sole trade? Have I got to do this? And what about that? And what about this? And you think, whoa, stop. What are you selling? The first thing is, what are you selling? What have you got? Do people want it?
It's crazy.
Do you actually have a business?
Like I can remember, there was 3 people that I knew within a short period of time where they paid out thousands, right, for contracts for staff, right, when they weren't even making any money in their business.
Wow.
So they were drawing up contracts for when they needed to take on staff, but they weren't even making money in their business. So there's no proof of concept that what you actually do works.
Yeah.
Let alone you're going to get staff in to fulfill some of it or take on some support or anything like that. Yeah. It's like you have to have that proof of concept.
You've got to have that.
Again, look, it's different levels. We're talking about business. I think we mentioned it last week. It's like most businesses and bigger businesses and stuff like that, they then just open the door one day and they've got a multi kind of national business or whatever it is. It always kind of went in different stages. So when that kind of startup and sustainability and stuff like that. And it does take different mindsets going through each one. Like you said, sometimes people don't want that. So they don't want that kind of pressure or anything like that, but they still want to stay where they are. And it's like sometimes that's fine, right? So they don't have to take that jump. And I think we spoke about before, haven't we, about how sometimes there is that pressure on growth. And it's like you should always be growing and stuff like that. Well, actually, you can still kind of be growing and sustaining at the same time because you're still moving forward.
Sort of exponentially. No, that's right.
Because you're not going through growth and stuff like that. And it's quite interesting, actually. I was talking to an accountant the other day, and we were just talking about different things with what I do within marketing and stuff like that, and what we do with strategy and conversions. And I was just talking about how some companies just want to sustain, and they want to kind of go slow, and they want to pick up market share, where others are aggressive. And I was talking about a company that, we were kind of doing some work with, and their whole thing was we want to at least double our turnover in the next 5 years. And they're talking millions, right? So it's not like a small business, it's talking millions. And the accountant said the thing straight away, and he just said, but obviously costs come with that as well. Right? And like we said it before as well, is like, okay, look, you could actually double your turnover from 12 million to 24 million, right? But your profit can remain the same or even decrease,
or even decrease
fulfillment costs and stuff like that to make it happen. Whereas actually, you could stay the same with the same amount of members of staff, and you could tweak something within your kind of marketing processes and the kind of strategic side and stuff like that to develop out those numbers and those profits. And you could double your turnover. Maybe you could increase it by 50%, and you don't actually need to take on any more staff.
No, so you put a massive amount onto your bottom line, and that's what it comes down to. When it, I think a lot of people, I know people. This buzzword is that turnover is vanity, and a lot of people don't say, I understand that, and profit is sanity, and all the rest of it. They understand that, but they don't really grasp it. So what they say, but I need to grow. And if I can grow this year, I can take on 2 more people. And then you say, well, okay, there you go. You've actually, in some cases, decreased your profit because you wanted to grow. And you think, so what comes first, the growth or the profit? And think about how it's going to balance. So in some cases, saying I want to double my business is actually not a good thing to do, because your profitability is going to drop through the roof, through the floor. I mean, so you've got to start saying, okay, so this is when the whole, going back to the accountants thing, this is when the whole modeling comes in. If I increase my turnover by this, what does it mean I have to do to be able to service that? And if I've got to take on loads of staff, is it worth me doing that at this point? So there's a whole set of numbers that have to be looked at in business as well.
Those numbers, I think, are really important, mate, especially for the ones who are, like, say, the sole traders. And then they're looking at transitioning from a sole trader to a micro business.
Yeah.
And, I do think, I think we've mentioned it before. I do think that the kind of coaching world have pushed this quite a lot, where everyone's kind of forced to grow. And it's a case of, well, if it's just you in the business, then you don't have a business, you have a job, and if you can't take a holiday and the business look after itself, then, you're tied to it. And I agree. And I respect that. And, that is the case. Some people are happy with that, but some people want more, and they buy into that dream of, okay, look, I do want the bigger business and stuff like that. But that step there, I think, is the biggest step and the biggest kind of minefield of moving from like a sole trader to taking on 1 member of staff. Because like you just said there, is that your money needs to, your turnover, your profit, they need to more than double.
Yeah.
You need to have the same amount of income as what you've inherited.
Yeah. It's and unless, and so this is where when people say that, your staff are your biggest asset, sometimes they're not, because they can be quite a big overhead. But the whole idea of and that's if it's used in the proper, the term of the word, but the whole idea of asset, again, if you spoke to an accountant, what is an asset? And he would say, an asset is something that generates a profit over and over and over again. So if you have staff who are selling for you, then there's a different, that's, you pay them commission and you pay them a salary, whatever. But the whole idea is that they're bringing in more money. But when you have to say, I really need some organization, and I need to take on a VA and people who are going to work on my admin part of my business, that, unless you can see an actual saving in the way your admin improves and the efficiency of your admin improves, that is an overhead. And but you have to accept it. But you have to get it at the right time. When the profit can afford that extra overhead, fine, that's when you take on that overhead. But sometimes very difficult balancing act.
I guess going into a bit more detail with that as well, because like you just said, getting the right support in, right, is definitely important, because it can free you up to obviously do the thing. And I guess what I was meaning by, the kind of first member of staff to come in is, I think sometimes what gets taught a lot is replacing yourself.
Yeah.
But for a while, until there's quite a few members of staff, you actually need the opposite. You need the people who can support you where you lack. So what's taking up your time? What's taking up your money? Can we get the people in to fill those slots?
Yeah.
So that it frees you up from doing all the kind of mundane tasks or the tasks that you're not good at. And again, I think probably from a mindset shift as well, is if we look at the opposite of giving up control, is I think sometimes that whole kind of mindset thing is like people think they have to do something because no one else is good enough to do it. And I've fallen into this category before, definitely.
Yeah. Absolutely right. That is so true when people think, and what happens is they get in their own way because they don't acknowledge that someone can probably do it better than them, but they think nobody can. You think, no, this is what I've built my business around. This is the way I work. This is this is how I want these things to go. And in fact, someone else can have the better ideas be in the background, but that's not your way. So it can't possibly be better. So I'm the person who has to do it. So I've done this with the copywriting stuff, where in Great Copyworks, the copywriting business was me. And I was writing, and I was doing really, fairly successful. The heart attack really brought it home. But before then, I had the plans to say, right, I need other people to step in and start helping me fulfill this. And there's a bloody good chance that I'm 62, and you've probably got a good chance you've got somebody who 20, maybe even a 30-year-old who can write far better than I can for a particular audience, because they're just there. And so why am I trying to, so all of a sudden you can bring in someone with fresh ideas and new ways of working, makes you a better person, and they can also learn from you. So everyone, they kind of grow exponentially. But when we think that we're the only person that can do that job the way it should be done, that's when we hit a major block that will stop our business growing anyway.
Yeah, I know. I think like I said, I think I've been there, definitely. Where
I have, yeah.
Letting go of control, and again, it's not even a case of you don't trust the person or anything like that. It's just that I think sometimes you know how it's meant to be done, and I guess especially for me as well is that I actually see it as being one of my skills is that I can talk to someone and they start telling me what they're trying to achieve and stuff like that. We've done it, mate. I mean, we did a call this week with a charity.
Oh yeah, that was good.
You know?
That was good.
It was really good, and we were going for it, and they were saying about what they're trying to achieve and stuff like that, and they're kind of hitting blocks all the time. But it's like once they kind of said what they were trying to achieve, my skill is like, right, okay, bang, bang, bang. I've got four different milestones now. What we need to do, to get there. And it's like for me, I can't give that up because I don't know how I replicate that. But actually, someone else may be. I mean, I trust you. You do exactly the same thing, and stuff like that. Where sometimes there are other people who can do the same thing.
I think you've got to be selective. Yeah, you've got to find out the people, and I think that's what our intention, isn't it, for strategy and conversions, that we're going to get the right people in when it really starts getting going. We'll get the right people in the team to do those jobs. But it's that I think one of the things that is I read recently is how massive a cost the acquisition is to get to acquire staff in the first place. But if you get it wrong, it's not only is it double the cost because you've got to find some way of maybe getting rid of them, but the amount of headache and overhead of your time, then the cost to taking on the wrong person for that job is immense. And again, this is where people are rushing into decisions. So I've got to take somebody on, and so they're rushing to that decision without actually thinking about, hang on, well, who do you want to take on? What's their job description? Do you know what they're going to be doing? How are you going to make sure they're doing what they're doing? Are they going to jeopardize stuff, or are they going to be work? They haven't even thought about all this stuff. They just go in and take on a member of staff and then think that, okay, I'll give it to them because they can do that. And that's a disaster.
I'll be honest, I think that there's an element to that is going on at the moment. And I think it started to go on for a little while. Now I think lots of people kind of jumped on it, but you kind of get the kind of digital marketing apprentice stuff like that, right? And it's something that's been around for quite a while. It's quite new in one respect because for me leaving school and stuff like that, digital marketing wasn't a thing. Social media wasn't a thing. But for people leaving school in say the last kind of 10 years, well, that's a career path.
Yeah.
Right. And as we progress and stuff like that through different technology and over the years, the digital side is going to be at the forefront of everything. So you need more people to do it. So obviously bringing in an apprentice and stuff like that makes perfect sense because you're bringing someone in who's going to be growing with you and they're going to be learning and they're going to be doing things. But what happens is exactly like what you said there, is that a company will get an apprentice in. I know apprentice maybe 18, something like that, maybe a little bit older. And then they just go, okay, you're in charge of marketing. And it's like, okay, so this person, like,
yeah,
it's like, but if you flip it around and you actually take what apprenticeships are, the whole kind of apprentice side, and you think of the trades, is that if you take someone who's an apprentice, a mechanic, right? They don't start off and someone drives into the garage and the guy goes, right, okay, go and figure out what's wrong with that car and fix it. It's that doesn't happen, And the same with, like, say, an electrician. It's not a case of, a company takes on an apprentice electrician and that apprentice is going off doing jobs on their own.
No.
The whole point is that they go through that whole kind of motion of teaching them and stuff, but the companies don't know what to teach them. So they're relying on the apprentice to come back and tell them what they need. And nothing. And what happens then is that hamster wheel happens. So marketing is being pumped out, right? Great. Okay, some awareness is happening. But, the three areas within the marketing strategy is we got the awareness side, the recognition side, but the other two are where the money is, or what brings the money in. So you're never getting that. And then you're just like, well, we're doing lots of marketing. We've got an apprentice, but it's not working. So what do we do now? Marketing doesn't work for us. Well, actually, you're going to struggle to be bringing in customers.
And I think, again, this is I think we mentioned this on, again, we've done 16, this is the 16th podcast, isn't it? But we've talked about the fact that even if you start up as a sole trader, there are going to be loads and loads of different jobs you do in the company. Each one needs a job description, and each one needs to sit somewhere in your company tree. And yes, you're going to be doing every one to start with. But the whole point about doing that is that you can then look at which one is taking most of your time. Do you enjoy it? Yes, I love it. Okay, you can carry on. If it's one that's taking up your time and you don't enjoy, that's the position you need to, as soon as you can, get someone in to fill. It's not your area of expertise. It's sapping your energy, and you're good at this, of generating an income or whatever. And so that's what you should be doing, rather than having to spend time bookkeeping, for example. The classic one is bookkeeping, isn't it? All the sole traders think, can't afford a bookkeeper. And you actually think that you can't afford not to have a bookkeeper, because a bookkeeper will do what you do in 5 hours, can do it in 2, and probably cheaper, and give you that free 5 hours of time to work on creating or whatever you do with your products and selling your services.
It is exactly that, isn't it? Like you said, it again is, how much is your time worth?
Yeah.
And that whole thing as well is first thing, okay, I can spend my time on this bookkeeping task, which stops me from making X amount of money.
Yeah.
Or I can pay out X amount of money to have that task done and still make this money. So I've basically made around about the same money anyway, but I wouldn't have made that money without, handing that task off. But going back to what you said now, I think that's a great example with business startups and stuff like that. So that, like we said, sometimes, not to kind of contradict ourselves and stuff like that, but we were talking about how some people look at the bigger picture and they talk themselves out of it. But actually, when you are starting a business, you still need to be looking at, what is next and stuff like that. And even as a sole trader, you still want to be kind of looking at setting your business up where it can grow and it can scale and stuff like that. So you are looking at, okay, look, I've got these different jobs, but I need to put them into kind of categories or departments. So that I know this job is being done this way and stuff like that. So I can actually see where my time is being taken up, or, what is it I hate? So you can replace that. And I think marketing is one of those things that I think post-pandemic, I think even we're talking that recent, that before then, it was still one of those kind of areas where people were like, marketing, I do a bit, and we got word of mouth and we got this and we, general traffic and all this kind of stuff. And then the pandemic hit and a lot of things dried up and they were like, right, okay, we need to take this serious now. But I think the last kind of 3 years, maybe, that sophistication level in marketing for it to work has changed. Right? Going back, I mean, when I started my business and going back a bit further, when I was kind of involved in marketing and stuff like that, so maybe about, say, 2013 sort of time, and I was working with a company here in the UK. I was working with a company in the States as well, and I was doing some training. I was a trainer working for them, with some of the stuff that they were doing, and a lot of it was around the kind of local business consultancy kind of role that I was, where we're looking at, okay, with your marketing, what do you need to do to start bringing customers in locally? How can you take advantage of it? And America's always been years in front of us with this kind of stuff, right? So we're looking at that stuff. And that's why I kind of started up my business then, so like 2015, as a local business marketing consultant, right? That was my thing. And I can remember going through a stage in my head where I was like, looking at what to call the business. And I ended up with the consultants side rather than going with the agency side. So even though that natural kind of progression or ascension within my services is that I'll go to a company and we say, like, you need to get this right, that right, blah, 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 because this is what you need. And they would get it. The next thing would be, well, can you do it for us? Right. Yeah. Because no one else was too much about, doing a whole kind of similar thing. And it was the case of, I can remember when I was starting up thinking, should I go down the agency route to do that? And my whole thinking was, at the minute, the barrier to entry is quite high. Not a lot of people know what to do. And even for me with doing things like selling stuff online, it was quite a long process. You'd have to set up a way of taking payment and setting up a merchant account and stuff like that. That actually took months to do, right? Whereas today you can set something up in an hour and start receiving funds, right? And that's like, we're talking 5, 6, 7 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I knew that the barrier to entry was going to be really low, that people are going to be able to do their own thing. And people leaving school, for example, are going to be a lot further forward in being able to do that kind of stuff, than, what people were 5 years ago. Right, so that's why I didn't go down the kind of agency route. And I was like, I feel like I'm going to put myself out of business by going down that route. And like we said, coming fast forward into today, well, actually now we've got apprentices that apparently can do, what an agency can do. So you can outsource all your stuff to an agency for X amount of money, or you can bring an apprentice in for a third, a quarter of the price.
Yeah.
And you're expecting them to do the same thing. But like we said, then you're not necessarily getting the same thing. However, you are from a practitioner point of view.
Yeah.
As long as they know what to do, they can do that.
Exactly. And that's the thing, isn't it? You've got, once you have those, especially from a marketing point of view, is if you have a good marketing strategy, which was what we're all about, and you know what needs to be done as part of that strategy, which things need to be fulfilled, then getting an apprentice in and saying, okay, this is what you do. This is as simple to say, even these are the buttons you press. This is what you have to think. This is what you have to think about in this thing, and just get them to do it so they're really, really competent with it. Then you can let them say, okay, let's give you a little bit of headway and allow you to do this piece for yourself. But you don't give them the whole lot and say, you tell me what to do.
And that's
the apprentice is going to look at you and say, well, I don't know. Haven't you read it in a book?
and maybe not even read, the actual kind of strategy side, planning stuff out. I mean, again, like I said, I feel like my skill is on that kind of mapping stuff out as a strategy. And there are people who can, they can do stuff, maybe say on like that kind of lesser level and it still be okay. But it's just like you said, if someone's just kind of read a book or they've just done a certain element to it, like we go back to mechanics, for example, right? If someone's just changed tires and then all of a sudden they have to do a whole service on a car, they're going to be like, well, where do I start? What do I do?
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's like, don't get me wrong as well, man. I mean, talking about kind of apprentices and stuff like that, I don't want it to sound as if I've kind of bashed them, because I actually think they are our future, right? They are going to be the ones that take it over. But going back to 3-5 years ago, I could tell you easily 5 companies that I work with where we've gone in, we've put basically the motions in place, the infrastructure in place for that sustainable acquisition system. And then apprentices have then taken that on to run it, to maintain it. All right. And I've even recommended to companies, whilst we're doing it, okay, get an apprentice in to take over, because I'm going to be charging you too much to maintain this. Well, I want that to be sustainable, that we're now looking at the next thing to add on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the same story right now.
Yeah, I think that comes back to the same thing. It's almost like the old trades apprentice back in the 70s and 80s, whatever, or even back further than that, is when you got them to do a job so well that you could then leave them to do that job. But you don't say, you've done that job pretty well, And so, for example, building cars, you've done that job pretty well at changing the tire. So now you're gonna fix the head gasket that's gone. And they can look at you and think, well, I don't even know what a head gasket is.
I mean, that happens just in regards to like normal business as well, though, doesn't it? I mean, how many, I know that I've seen it happen before as well, where you've kind of been working somewhere, someone's done really well at, say, a sales job, and then they've been promoted into being a department manager.
Yeah.
And they fall,
Yeah.
they fall apart because they're just like, I've got no idea what I'm doing here or how to
Yeah.
manage the team
Because
or lead a
a
team.
whole level, yeah, a whole new level of skills. Even if, going back to the car analogy, a whole new level of skills. Someone can change the tires that in their sleep because they're that good. But as soon as you put them in front of something that needs to, they need a fast, different set of skills to understand what they got to take off, the sequence they got to take off to get to the part that's the problem. If they haven't been equipped for it, they're going to make balls up of it. I did that years ago with. I remember I used to service my motorbikes, and one day my cam belt went, and it not anyway. Technical thing, but it meant I had to take the whole top of the engine off and change components inside. Never done it before. Went at it blindly and completely and utterly wrote off the engine of my bike.
I think that's the thing as well. I think we've all been there and done something, haven't we? Where we're just like, within hindsight, we wouldn't have done that. I think that'll bring us on great to kind of talking about rushing into decisions. But just before we do, I think we're talking about stuff then. I think to me, what came into my head was driving your car. You don't even think about it, right? You just get in your car and you drive.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, if you had to drive someone else's car,
oh yeah, that's right.
It's like a different thing altogether.
Yeah.
Right? You're just like, what's going on? I need to like.
I'm not sure about this. Yeah,
I need to figure it out, and that there is exactly like what happens. And again, I think sometimes it's unfair. The pressure that gets put onto like the apprentices within marketing, especially, is like you said, they may be really good at, right? Okay, look, I can post that on social media, or I mean, stuff like the different kind of programs for making video and different kind of designs and images and stuff like that. Some of them are red hot, and I'll even go as far as to say that there's probably apprentices that know certain platforms better than what I do, right? I mean, I'm never going to be a TikTok expert, right? You're never going to catch me doing dances every day on there and stuff like that. But an apprentice may be all over that, and it's like, but I think sometimes what happens there, again, that pressure is like, right, we need this to work, or why didn't that work? We wanted sales from that, but it's not working, and it's like, but that's levels above them.
That's at that point. Because they haven't had that kind of they haven't been equipped for that. They are still, like you said, they're at the technical level, and fantastic technicians.
Yeah,
you can't. And I saw this in the computer when I used to be in the computer industry. We used to have engineers who were brilliant engineers. They'd gone up through the ranks to like country support engineers back in the days of big computers, mainframes and things. And they were brilliant engineers. And engineers don't like paperwork, love working on their own, and have a really analytical skill set. Yeah. So then they were promoted to managers. Whoa, the whole world blows apart because there's nothing to analyze because people behave in totally different ways. They're not working on their own anymore. They now got to manage a team. And guess what? There's a massive paperwork involved as well. And most of them left. It was quite funny watching them leave.
That's the big thing, isn't it? It's just like that. It's just like that conveyor belt.
Yeah, it's just crazy, and they left with their top managers thinking, well, I thought he was a really good guy, and I was really surprised. You think, well, because he's an engineer.
Exactly that. Exactly that. I was just thinking as well that with the kind of apprentice side and stuff like that, and even just people who are maybe new to doing something, I do think that there's one area which puts them maybe a peg above us, right? And that's where they are prepared to take risk.
Yeah.
Right? So I think with us, for example, and talking to companies and stuff, we're looking at leveraging risk in an educated way. Right? So we're looking at, okay, where can we leverage risk in regards to maybe funds, being allocated to certain things, different processes being put in place, or different kind of transformation within the way the business is doing something. But the whole point of that is to add lots more kind of profit in the end for it to come out. Whereas you get some people like where they're new, they're fearless. So
Almost, yeah.
so they will be like, well, let's do this, let's do that, let's do that.
That's right, yeah.
And sometimes it can pay off if you get it right. And a quick story there, I remember like for me, like years back as well, from success that I had in my business, it kind of moved into sport. To start dealing with sport and stuff like that. And it got to a point where basically we were looking at kind of getting sponsorship for different football clubs. And basically we were basically having companies come to us that wanted to sponsor certain kind of clubs within sport. And we obviously needed to speak to the clubs and see which kind of, I guess, deals that they had available that we can match them up with and stuff like that. And I think me being really conservative is that, right, okay, look, we have to go about this in a way to get in touch with the decision maker and stuff like that. And, I guess approach how we can, start working with them and take our cut and stuff like that. And I had a guy who came in to do some work with me. And he was absolutely fierce. He was just straight on the phone, like, yeah, we got this deal. Do you want it or not? And it was just like,
yeah.
But do you know what happened? It just put that person in the spot where they were like, yeah, actually, we do want to talk about that.
Yeah.
And it was like, whereas, someone like me might be like, right, okay, yeah, we're trying to reach the person who deals with this. And
yeah.
And like, what would happen if we did this and would it work and stuff like that? With the guys like, do you want it or not? And
I think, and I think that's where we, going back to the kind of the mindset thing, that's where we can tangle ourselves up in knots, because we've gone through all this rejection, we've gone through all this stuff, and out of it comes the other end is we overthink something. Mm-hmm. We can overthink we need to speak to that person. Whereas someone who hasn't gone through that and doesn't have all that baggage of that kind of stuff just thinks, oh, just pick up the phone and speak to them and get to the person they want, So I think it's quite interesting, isn't it? So we do have emotional blocks and stuff as people anyway. Everybody does. But it's also that we can get too embroiled in all this stuff that goes on around us and lose the real target. Hang on, what do we want to do? We want to get this person to say yes. And instead of thinking, well, we need to make sure we don't, we mean to, when I was in network marketing, the thing I was in network marketing is that we used to say to people, if you want to talk to them, phone them. Oh, but they might be in the middle of their lunch.
Yeah.
And don't overthink it. They may not be. Yeah. Just phone them.
Totally. And I think that, and again, like you say, I think that comes back to the mindset side of me. They just don't want to phone them.
Yeah, well, that's what it was. It was a fear of picking up the phone, and we've all got it. I mean, I've had the fear of picking up the phone until I bought a franchise of a business for creating a business network in Reading, and day one I knew I had to pick up the phone and just go to the phone, but phoning every business that I could, cold calling, and that scared the death out of me. And I wouldn't do it again, but I did it for 3 months, and I built up about 100 membership.
And look, I guess that if we boil everything down to it, it's like, look, you had to do it, otherwise the business wouldn't have worked. So you knew that already, that was there, and you hear stories all the time, don't you, of stuff that like you see like a mother having superhuman strength to something's happened and a child's inside and stuff like that, and you think like, we have it all inside us when we want it.
We have that potential.
Having that big enough, why, I guess.
And that's where, again, the decisions thing, where we're talking about rushing into decisions or not, as the case may be. If a why is big enough, like we're talking about the apprentices, for example, the guy that you had in the sports thing. If the why is big enough, and that's all they've got, we've got all sorts of different whys. But if we have a business reason for doing this, a real big enough why, we know the decisions. Even before we spend time thinking about it, we know what's the right decision and what isn't, and we know that that's not a decision we should rush into. Yet we still do, it's there's a big thing about the part of the business coaching that I talk about. There's a big thing, and once you understand your why, you make decisions based on your why, not on the how, as in how can I make this happen. The why is the why. I know I need this. I am going to make it happen, and I'll find ways of making this happen. So totally different mindset for decision making.
Yeah, totally. I was thinking there as well, like it's about rushing into decisions. I think like wrapping things up soon. So I think we're kind of approaching an hour and stuff like that.
Oh God.
But
Okay.
time just flies, right? We just
Yeah.
start talking and things happen. But talking about rushing into decisions, we mentioned towards the end of the podcast last week about Coca-Cola, and like what they did in the 80s is that they changed the recipe to Coke, right? And I can remember reading this. I can remember I was watching a program about Pepsi versus Coke. It's like, it still goes on to today, and it's like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
always going to
Yeah.
happen and stuff like that. But it was really interesting. Like what happened there is that um, basically Pepsi did a survey, right? So they did a taste test, right? So what they did is they had, I think so they had Pepsi Coke, and I think they had maybe had some different kind of brands as well. It might have even just been the two, but they put a small amount in each cup, and they said, like, okay, look, taste it, getting the people to taste it. Which ones do you prefer? And like Pepsi was a runaway success, right? And Coke got scared of this, and they decided that they needed to change their recipe. And what happened was people were saying that they preferred the taste of Pepsi because it was sweeter, right? And
Right.
basically what Coke did then is they taste basically people said that they preferred the taste of Pepsi, right? So Coke went out to match or change their recipe to make it better with Pepsi because Pepsi had more sugar or something like that. It tasted
Yeah.
sweeter. But then there was like, okay, I don't know what the type of person is who kind of would then look at the findings. I guess it's someone in kind of nutrition or something like that. But they said when you have a small amount of something, when it has more sugar in there, you will instantly think that it tastes better because
Okay.
it triggers something in your head that
Yeah.
this is better because it's sweeter, or whatever kind of chemicals are in there, right? But because of that, Cook went out and rushed and changed their recipe just because of that survey. When actually on a wider scale, as if someone had a can of Pepsi and a can of Coke, they prefer Coke,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
and they actually preferred the old Coke taste, which then made Coke turn back to having their old recipe. But I can't even remember how much it cost them to go through new recipe, new cans, bottles, all that kind of stuff. To then go, actually, let's scrap that and let's go back to what we did before.
Knee-jerk reaction. Yeah.
That's it. And I think that's what we're kind of talking about with sometimes I think people go rushing into things because that short-term win looks like it
Yeah.
is a lot better than what it actually is,
Yeah.
rather than looking at the longer kind of play there and thinking, okay, can we make this work? Is this as good as what it seems? And we get this a lot sometimes with, it used to be a big thing. I don't think you see it anymore. I think they've got smarter in their kind of wording, but you used to see things like, get rich in a weekend, make $1 million this weekend and stuff like that, become a millionaire with this program. And people instantly are like, yeah, I want that. I'll go and do that. And they instantly go and buy it, only to then figure out they need to put in a lot of work or
Yeah.
the person was lying, And I think we still see it today with just people making the wrong decisions to jump into things. And I think
so.
some, oh, mate, carry on, yeah.
I was just thinking, so. I mean, one of the biggest things, one of the hugest, and I know probably not everybody is thinks of this way. One of the big things is the whole thing about crypto and Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could make millions. You could go on a bit. The amount of adverts you see about becoming a Bitcoin millionaire, actually, Bitcoin is losing value, as in a lot of the cryptos. And the whole point about you could be, it's the potential to become a millionaire, and people have made lots of money out of it because they've hit it at the right time when there's been a boom. But at the moment, if you invested in it, you'd be losing a load of money because everything's going down. But people still buy into it, and it's because they're not looking at long term. They're just seeing this, oh, millionaire, yeah, and it's an easy kind of, it's portrayed as being an easy way to get to being a millionaire.
I think that's the thing. Like for me, I'll be honest, I haven't dived too much into the crypto thing. I can remember having a chat like ages ago. As a guy called Dickie Armour, and
Dickie,
he made the switch into crypto, right?
Yeah.
And just before he did, I can remember I was having a good conversation with him, and I just said, I get crypto, I understand that side to it, and I think it's awesome. I said, but what I don't understand is how I can just walk and buy a bag of crisp in a shop, right? With I could have like, because we were talking, it was just like, do you know what? You can't take cash on an airplane or a certain amount above a certain amount of cash on an airplane, right? And go to America and spend it because people would stop you. but you could go through with a crypto wallet of a billion or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And nothing would ever happen. And it was like, I get that, but you could have £1 million worth of Bitcoin in your pocket, but you couldn't spend it. And that was the thing. And I was like, as soon as someone, I think, gets that right, I think that's when it's a different realm. And it is. We're talking a good 5 years ago that we were having that conversation. It's come on a lot since then. But the thing is exactly with that is that, okay, I don't know enough about it, right, to go all in on it and stuff like that. You could have a flutter or a gamble or whatever it is, but you then have to look at the other side of, not saying it's a Ponzi scheme, but like you said, sometimes like cash can get chucked in to keep something afloat.
Oh yeah.
And then all of a sudden it disappears. You have nothing then,
No,
I mean, I'll be honest, man, like going back, God, 15 years ago, I was always trying to make money and stuff like that. And I got involved in stocks and shares, and I didn't know enough to look at different kind of balance sheets and stuff like that. And there was a company that I kept investing into, even though the price was dropping. And at some point it disappeared. And I lost a lot of money in it, And it was like, I always say to people with stocks and shares, I was just like, do you know what? I lost a lot of money. I made a lot of money. Luckily enough, I broke even.
And
it's like, and stuff like that. But again, like coming back to what we're saying is you don't know enough about it. And I think this is something really good to kind of wrap up on as well, that we're talking about Branson, and I guess to be fair, mate, we should say Sir Richard Branson, right?
We should say Sir Richard.
And show some respect.
Yes.
He's down to earth, right? He's got shorts on and stuff. We'll call him Branson. But there's a quote that comes back to him that says, if someone offers you an opportunity, say yes and figure out how to make it happen. And I feel like, do you know what, mate? Like years back, it was an opportunity. Like, so there was such a thing as an opportunity, but I think probably, us being the worst people within marketing, is that kind of term opportunity has been used to death, really. So everything kind of seems an opportunity. So you're kind of jumping in to do something when actually it's not the best decision, because you don't know how to do something, you probably never know how to do it properly, and you're going to get a lot of stress in doing things,
Yeah, and to be fair to Sir Richard Branson, I'm sure he did his homework. I'm sure when he said yes, it was after he had spent a deal of time looking at whether it was the right decision or not. I don't expect he said yes on the spur of the moment.
Exactly. We're going back to that educated decision, right? I think what happens is, like, for instance, I know that this has happened before. I've seen people do it. And what they do is they say yes to something, and then they're learning how to do it. And this happens, I guess, a lot within the kind of marketing space, the coaching space, and stuff like that, is that they say they can do something and they've never done it before. All right. So I can remember working with someone, man, I won't go into too much detail and stuff like that, but I can remember someone came up with a coaching program and they wanted to charge a fair amount of money for it. And their kind of sales copy started off with, I've helped thousands of, these type of people all over the world achieve such and such. And it's just like, who have you helped? Well, no one. It's a brand new business. And it's like, so you're just straight up lying, and it's like, yeah, but what I do is once I get the first one in, I'll figure out what worked for them, and then I'll, tweak it and stuff like that. And I'm like, this is the problem.
I'm afraid I call it an industry because I trained for 4 years to become a coach. And I really think that there's huge benefits to people of being coached, but I'm afraid it's an industry that has so many not wannabe, it's the wrong word, so many people in there who will tell you something that basically lie to a certain extent. And I hate that in that industry, because people treat it with cynicism, because that's what happens, isn't it?
Totally. I think you hit the nail in the head there. Is what people then start to perceive that industry as, and I think marketing has gone that way. I think that's the whole kind of confusion where, especially with price, for example, is like, someone will go, okay, well, do you know what? I can get an apprentice in. I don't even know how much it costs now, but just say for instance, it's 15K to get an apprentice in for the year, right? And we can get that apprentice in, and they can do all our marketing for us, or, well, do you know what? Like, these guys at Strategy and Conversions, they want 15K for 3 months. Like, why would we pay, them when we can pay an apprentice? It's like, there's different levels to the game.
It's different levels. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, it is that thing of, who do you want to trust? Someone who's been there and done it and got the results, or someone who's trying to figure it out? And again, not saying that on the kind of apprentice side, but going back to the coaching stuff, is I think there's so many courses that teach you how to do something. And then once you've kind of done the course, you then say that you can do something. And it's like, in one respect you can, but in one respect you haven't had enough experience. And we'll come back to driving, for example, is that you can pass your test, but you don't really know how to drive.
No,
you've been out there for a little while on the road on your own.
Yeah, great analogy. And when you pass a test, it's the beginning of your driving experience, isn't it? It's not you've passed your test. You are a fantastic driver. You couldn't go out and win a Grand Prix. You've just passed a test which says you're okay. Yeah, okay really means that you're okay to drive on the road. When you look at some of the blokes, you look at some of the people on the road nowadays, you wonder actually if they've been through a test. But
as well, mate, there's a program on Amazon Prime. You got Jeremy Clarkson. He's got this program about his farm, right? So it's a really good series. But anyone should watch it. I think it's great. But you got this guy in there who's like working with him on the farm, and he's like a proper kind of local lad, never really left the village. And like Jeremy Clarkson sends him off to London to sell some wasabi or something like that, right? So he's obviously, look, mate, he can drive a tractor and stuff. Like, I would never know how to drive a tractor, right? He could drive a tractor, do all this kind of amazing stuff. He can drive a car. He gets into London, and all of a sudden there's 6 lanes and there's traffic moving all across. And people are beeping at him. He's beeping back. He's having a row. He's got no idea. He knows how to drive, but that environment is different. What he's trying to achieve within that place is totally different to what he's been used to.
What a great analogy that could be.
We'll have to work on that, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
but yeah, mate, we'll wrap things up here because I think we've gone past the hour mark again.
Okay.
But
bear with us. There's some gems in this, honestly.
I think that's the thing. I mean, I'm only saying an hour because I think it works for people. There could be people going, "Don't stop." Let's get some more going on. Mate, cheap little plug. Look, if you want more of us, then join the Progression Club, right?
Yeah,
get in there, and you can get access to us all the time. Yeah. But yeah, I think talking through this one, I don't think there's been anything that's like jumped out where I'm just like, this is what we're going to talk about on the next episode.
No, true.
I think so, something that I do want to talk about. Maybe we'll kind of look into it. I spoke about me doing the kind of local business marketing consultancy sort of stuff like years ago, and basically for most business, the pandemic's changed it a bit, but not massively. But for most businesses, majority of their customers come from a certain radius from where they are.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But for most businesses, I know we live in that kind of online world and drop shipping and e-commerce and all this kind of stuff, but a normal business will usually deal with customers within a certain radius, or bulk of your customers will be within a certain radius. Like I said, this changed slightly, over the pandemic and stuff like that, because it has opened up so many opportunities. But I think just going back to that and looking at how the kind of online versus offline infusion actually is amazing today, and especially with things opening back up, there's a real opportunity. So I think, if you're happy, mate, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
I think that's a great opportunity for people to kind of look at. But as we wrap up this episode, is there anything that we've kind of gone through that just to summarize stuff where you're just like, this was the moment for me, or
Well, I mean, I'm a bit biased because I love talking about the whole mindset and the conscious and subconscious mind, but I think I could talk about that stuff all day, and maybe that's a separate thing altogether. I don't know, separate thing we could do, but I think it's all about the fact that we need to. For us to really succeed at what we want to do, there's always going to be different levels of fears, if you like, or blockages that we need to get coached out of us, and so that we can move forward. Because as you grow a business, you're growing into different levels.
I think we touched on something in a podcast before. I think it was a podcast where we were talking something like that, and we said about, again, those kind of different levels. Is that there is a different kind of, within kind of marketing and business growth, there is a sophistication level that needs to grow as well.
Yeah.
You don't have to know the how, you have to know the why.
Yeah.
You touched on that again within this episode about, the why, and stuff like that, where that is to me a big thing. And I think just to finish off, maybe we'll just kind of finish off by saying, look, if anything I've said to kind of bashed apprentices is not true. I love you all. I kind of see like apprentices as like my children. It's like they're the future, right? They're the
They
ones
are the
coming
future,
through.
definitely. They've got to be just treated well. They've got to be treated well and treated right.
I'm actually thinking we need to put something together, don't we? We need to put that kind of that education process together, and that support is what we need to put together. That they have that support side to it.
Yeah, I think so. That'd be good. Yeah.
That'll give me something to think about.
Yeah.
But yeah,
brilliant.
Mark, it's always been a pleasure.
Yeah.
And we'll get together again and we'll record episode 17.
17, my God. Yes, we will.
Then we'll see you then. Take care.
Yeah. Okay. Cheers then.